In this video, we're going to talk about outsourced HR. What is that? When is outsourced HR better than in-house? Let's get chatting now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams, the host of HR Shop Talk. On this show, you get expert insight into all things HR. I encourage you to subscribe to the show or the podcast to keep learning from my smart and experienced guests. Today, I'll be talking to Vered Levant. Vered is an HR consultant here in Calgary and is also the founder and president of VIMY HR. She's also the guest who's featured on my most popular episode to date. Hi, Vered. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me again, Andrea.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So we're going to talk about outsourced HR. So let's start in a very obvious place. What is outsourced HR?
So outsourced HR to me is just very familiar, I guess, for most people when they think about IT and outsourcing IT. There's components of it that could be outsourced while you still have an HR department. In our world, we work with small businesses, so most of their HR function is outsourced to us.
Okay, so you say some components can be outsourced. What components lend themselves to being outsourced and what components don't?
When we do support larger organizations, which sometimes happens for VIMY as well, typically we're supporting things like organizational assessment. So looking at an organization maybe that isn't functioning very well to see if there's some efficiencies that need to be created, some org design work, or pieces like workplace investigations that need to be outsourced. Sometimes there's just excess capacity. So there's
right.
The HR department doesn't have enough capacity to revamp their policies or implement a new HRIS system. So that's when we come into place to support that HR department.
I mean, this sounds just a lot like HR consulting, like where, a consultant gets hired to do an investigation or do some sort of org review. Is there a difference?
For me, there isn't. I think it's the whole umbrella of HR consulting and all the different pieces that could be outsourced. For us, we actually are partners in the business with our small business clients. So we are the outsourced experts. Another way to say it is fractional HR. So we are their HR partner on a fractional basis. They don't need someone full-time. They just need all of the HR functions taken care of, but they don't need full-time support.
Okay, can I ask a money question? Do people typically pay for outsourced HR on a retainer basis or on an hourly basis? Or maybe it's a package deal, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a variety. So for outsourced HR, when all of the functions are covered, I think typically it is kind of more of a subscription model, retainer model, because you require that support. And maybe as a client, you would say, well, I need 10 hours of support per week to cover all these functions. And this is how we're going to set up our arrangement. And then other times it's just project work, and you would probably see that as an hourly rate.
So can you describe work that's typical of outsourced HR? So let's pretend I'm going to go into an organization and do outsourced HR. What am I going to be doing?
It depends. It really depends on the company and what they need. So typically a client of ours who don't have HR support say, we need HR. We have no idea what that looks like, but I think we need some policies in place. Maybe our employee contracts reviewed. Can you come in and just take a look? So where we typically start is with our discovery phase, which is our assessment of where the organization is at.
Okay.
Taking a look at all their policies, procedures, what do they have in place foundationally for their HR, and then where do they want to go as an organization, and where's the gap, and how are we going to get them to that future state.
So I now have some experience with outsourced HR, and a lot of times it's just they just want you to keep the HR function operational, get that day-to-day stuff done. Is that your experience, or how do you do it differently?
So the way that we do it differently is absolutely we can get the day-to-day stuff done, but we are very strategic in terms of our support. Part of our discovery phase, which I didn't chat about, was we actually do leadership interviews as well. So we're figuring out, where are leadership at? What has been their experience with HR? Where do we need to course correct? Also, what kind of leadership experience do they have? And where do we need to build some capacity and capability in that team so that they can actually reach their vision for the organization?
When you get a client calling you up and saying, I need a recruiter, I need some help with some recruitment, I need this much per month. They've got a very focused need that they want addressed. How do you go from that focus to the broad, full picture?
We're not always a fit. So if the client says, we don't want to do the whole gamut, we don't want an HR partner, and they just want to focus on recruitment and maybe mass recruitment, and they have a whole bunch of new positions that they need to bring into the organization, we actually have partners who are recruiters. So our focus, which I've learned along the way in 5 years in business, is we need to be focused. We are experts in providing really generalist, strategic HR support for growing organizations. We also are experts in finding the right sources to get all of the HR functions taken care of, from a benefits perspective, recruitment, workplace investigations, safety. We partner with quite a bit of experts to support our clients.
So that was going to be another example I wanted to delve into, is like, let's say, for example, investigations, and an employer comes to you and says, we need to do this investigation. And you say, okay. And you look at it and you realize that the situation was really avoidable by, leadership training, better leadership, all of that. How do you handle that?
So 2 things that I actually want to mention is, because we are strategic partners in the business, we get to know the employee population, and we are basically an extension of that team. A lot of the times I will actually outsource the investigations because otherwise we are brought into a space where our relationship with the employees and the leadership could change because of that investigation and the results of it. So I feel like it's a conflict, and typically we bring in an outside expert.
Okay, the second part was when they come to you with a specific need, it could be investigation, it could be something else, and you see that the real root cause is leadership.
Yeah, it often happens. We are continually working with our clients through culture and engagement projects, I call them, stay interviews, and actually we end up building, and results from workplace investigations, we end up building a whole other set of recommendations and activities that need to be rolled out to support maybe rebuilding a culture. That often happens in small businesses too, where they started off with the 5 people and communication was really easy, starts to break down as they grow. So very, very often we are going through these processes where we're trying to see, what do we need to do? We typically need to be more involved, and we go in on site at least 10 hours a week to have our ear to the ground, support leadership, and building their communication tools, and enhancing that culture again.
Right. Outsourced HR. If you found this insightful, subscribe to see all the episodes and comment. Do you have any experience with outsourced HR, either being the outsourced HR or hiring some? Let us know what that experience was like in the comment section. Okay, so next question here. How do you work out the details of outsourced HR with clients when they probably don't know what they need?
And you go back to our discovery phase.
Okay.
And that's actually where we build the HR plan to say, these are all the gaps.
Okay.
So sometimes their policies are actually okay, and that's not going to be the starting point, but they're tracking all their employees through Excel spreadsheets, and the whole onboarding process is taking the CFO hours and hours of time. That's not sustainable. So of course, we're going to implement an HRIS system. We're going to build an onboarding program. We're also going to look at recruitment process. What are those things where we can streamline and create efficiencies?
Right.
So that's essentially how we do it. We look at kind of all those buckets foundationally, operational efficiencies. What do we need to do to increase engagement levels if that's an issue, build leadership capacity? What is it that needs to be done? And we actually build an HR plan that needs to be executed over the next 6 to 12 months with the leadership support, and build an action plan to address those gaps.
Yeah. Do you develop that plan kind of in collaboration with leadership?
So the recommendations come out of the discovery phase.
Right.
And then we actually work with the leadership to go, okay, well, these are our recommendations. This is what we're thinking the priorities are and the timing, but we want to work with you to, because there are some things happening in their business from an operational standpoint that might be in conflict. So it always has to be in a partnership with leadership to be able to move through. Yeah. And there are going to be some pieces that they're going to say, well, we don't want to do that yet. Right. We're not ready to let go of our recruitment process. We want to hold on to that for a bit longer. And that's okay. It's their business. They need to make those decisions. It's our role as HR consultants to just bring to light what needs to be addressed.
Okay. So what do you find challenging about outsourced HR?
Oh my gosh, it's so challenging. Constantly rolling with the punches. Like, great, we have a plan in place. We're going to execute on all these things. And things happen along the way. Yeah. You have a plan, but it's only just a rough plan. And performance issues come up, or, there's a switch in leadership and you have to restart again and build that relationship. So there's all this stuff that comes up, and we really just need to be flexible and agile, and actually lead the charge. Really not be afraid to poke and prod and try to move forward in terms of what we know would actually support the business. And sometimes they're a bit resistant to it because they don't fully understand either the risk involved or how it's really impacting the workforce.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Final question here. What is key to making an outsourced HR relationship? And I know we'll talk more about relationships in another episode, but what is key to making outsourced HR relationships go well?
Communication. Lots and lots of communication.
Okay.
Where are we at? What have we done? What has been the impact? And more so, actually, as a starting point, always being focused on the business problem.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is we always talk about the pain points at the beginning of our relationship. What are you seeing, leader, as the major pain point for you in the business? What do you see operationally that could be changed if you had the right people in place, if you had the right tools in place? Mm-hmm. So we're always focused on that. What is the business problem and what is the quickest way to solve it? Most practical solution.
Well, thanks, Farah. That was insightful. There's so much in the nuance of that. And I'm going to enjoy listening to this again. Thanks for watching, all of you out there, and we'll see you next time.